What's up, everybody? Today I'm going to show you my Amon power leveling build. So this build is mostly for people that are going to be doing vile bounties and bounties in order to get from 30 to 50 as quick as possible. It's really good at taking out vile bounties using your forge skill. We're going to use the forge skill to also create a singularity and use the forge axes to be able to freeze enemies in place, as well as using ordnance to spawn in forge hammers. So we're going to jump right into the skill tree and I'll talk you through how it works. So starting off with the skill trees, here you can see we're primarily using the green cybernetics tree with some points into the vengeance tree, a little bit for survivability. This build is built around being able to use any of the guns that are available to you at the time. So it's not gun specific or even element specific. It's really just using our action skill as a means of. Our first 5 points we're going to put into cast iron, so we gain force skill, cooldown rate, and gun handling. This is just the best of the starting options, as we're going to be using the forge skill as our primary means of knocking plates off the vile bounties. So we want to have that cooldown in case we don't get them all knocked off in one shot. At least we have a better chance of getting them in the second time around. Alright, our next 5 are going to go into Tempered Pyre. So this is anytime we activate our forge skill, our action skill, we're going to create a axe forge drone. So these are kind of like minions that will float around and attack enemies to help you do damage. They're not the greatest when it comes to trying to knock off the plates of vile bounties, but once those plates are knocked off using the initial blast from the forge skill and the singularity that it creates, which I'll show you here in a second, this just helps you do more damage, and they will continue to follow around for another 20 seconds after you've used your forge skill. Next, we're going to use Bellows. We're going to put 5 points into Bellows. Anytime we activate our forge skill, we're going to get increased gun damage, and once again, this is base gun damage, so it doesn't affect any specific element, which is what we're wanting here. And so you activate your forge skill in the initial attack on a vile bounty or on a bounty, and then you have an increased gun damage to go ahead and knock this health out before the plates replace themselves. Lastly, for the first group of skills, we're going to put one into Twin Tempers. This one just spawns another forge drone, which is now Cryo. Our first one, Tempered Pyre, is all incendiary melee damage. Now we're going in 1 point for Twin Tempers to give us a Cryo forge drone as well, and this one will fly around in tandem with the Tempered Pyre forge drone and do damage to whatever you're targeting. Alright, now that we've opened up our next trees, we're going to talk about the augment first. So this is the most important piece of this puzzle as far as the augments go. It's Searing Cold, Frost Axes, apply Freeze on, Impact, and then Flame Axes now pass through enemies. So the reason this is important, this is going to play into your initial attacks on any of the bounties that you're doing. So your initial attack should be using a Frost Axe, because it will instantly freeze the bounty. Now this will work on vile enemies, they will freeze, and then you can throw your forge skill at the enemy with making sure you hit the target both on the way out and the way back in. So this just makes it easier. It helps knock off all the plates. It also does some status effect damage while it's stuck in the enemy, which is helpful because you'll hear it ticking away at some of the vile bounty plates. But more so, it's crowd control. It keeps them in one spot, and then you can use your forge skill and then just gun them down with whatever guns you have equipped. Our next 5 are going to go into permafrost. So whenever we freeze an enemy, a cryo hazard is created underneath them. So this is actually where that status effect damage is coming from that I was talking about. When you use your axes, you'll be able to freeze the enemy. It'll create a hazard beneath them that is going to do cryo damage to them while they're frozen, and then you can use your forge skill to knock off the plates if it's a vile, or just do excess damage by activating the action skill in that order. You're then creating more gun damage because of the 5 points that we put up here in Bellows. So the next step is just having permafrost to create extra damage. Our next 3 are going to go into Wild Heart here. So Amon gains increased stat effect damage and hazard damage. This just helps with the hazard helps boost the hazard that we're getting from permafrost, but also creates some extra status effects. So when your forge skill goes through an enemy, it can have a chance at creating status effect as well. Then we're going to put 2 into reactive armor. Detonations partially restore Amon shield. Since we're using the axes to freeze things in place, they're automatically going to be primed. If you kill them when an axe is in place, they will detonate, and then when they detonate, you'll get shield and ordnance cooldown. So just a little bit of survivability And the only reason we have 2 is because we're just trying to get enough to open up the last trait here, which is reverse explosion. So whenever you deal forge skill damage, create a drone singularity. If you're familiar with the grenades that create the singularities, it pulls the enemies in and does damage to them. So we're freezing the enemies with our forge axe, then we're hitting them with forge skill, so that going in and going out and coming back in is going to do damage, as well as create hazards, which is going to create the drone singularity, which is going to keep them in place. So even if the freeze from the axe wears off, at least you'll have the drone singularity. It also is another form of crowd control. So that's a big trend in this build, is that we just want to be able to control all the enemies and knock them down one at a time, rather than having to focus on a lot of them with a ton of damage. We're doing more crowd control. Alright, our next 3, we're going to go over to the Vengeance Blue Tree. We're going to put 3 into the Thrill. So anytime you take damage or absorb any non-status effect damage, you're gaining a stack of Resolute. When you have this Resolute, it just does a missing health regeneration, so you're constantly getting health back from taking damage, and this is just another form of survivability. Alright, for our next 5, going back to the Cybernetics tree, we're going to go 5 into Tempered Ice, and I have 4 from a class mod. So it's a Forge Drone skill. Whenever you activate your ordnance, you now have a Cryo Forge Hammer that will follow around, and this will fly around just like the Forge Axes that we've gotten from Tempered Pyre and Twin Tempers. Those are all 3 going to just be extra damage, and they're just little minions that float around and do damage. So you don't have to control them, but they will attack with things, mostly with what you're attacking. Next is going to be Masterwork. So Forge Drones gain increased damage and duration. These were also buffed in the most recent patch, so that's a huge damage boost that we're seeing from those. And then we're going to go 5 into that. And our last one in the green trees can be Ordained Hammer. So dealing ordnance damage, or Forge Drones now deal ordnance damage in addition to other types and gain a chance to cause detonation on damaging enemies. So once again, this is just another form of detonation. Lastly, for the Cybernetics tree, we'll go over the capstone. So when you're first starting out and you get your first 30 points in, you're only going to have Conflangerang available to you. So this is the one that we're going to end up using right off the bat. You're dealing incendiary melee damage in both directions, and it gains increased radius, and it leaves a trail of fire. So just an increased damage all around. This one does really well when it comes to knocking the plates off vile enemies. And if you froze them in place with your axes and then then use Conflangerang, it's going to knock some off, and then you're going to have the singularity to hold the mob in place. And then it just makes it a lot easier. Even if you don't knock all the plates off with one shot with Conflangerang, you'll at least have them frozen or in the singularity to be able to shoot them easier and keep them from moving. This is especially helpful with some of the flying Cratches that have bounties on them, especially the Vital Cratches. Alright, and our final 8 points are all going to be in the Vengeance tree. We're going to put our first 5 into Amon, or Scorched Kairos. Amon gains increased ordnance damage and magazine size. And then we're also going to put in 3 Tail of the Comet. So whenever you deal ordnance damage, there's a chance to apply Cryo Status Effect and Cryo damage over time. The reason we're doing this is because our final portions of the Cybernetics tree, our final point, made our Forge Drones now deal ordnance damage in addition. So we're just buffing our Forge Drones by giving them more damage through our ordnance damage and mag size, and then giving a chance of doing Cryo Status Effect and Cryo Effectiveness to all the enemies. That's it for my Amon leveling build. Once again, this is designed around trying to power level from 30 to 50, doing mostly bounties and vile bounties. It's designed to work with whatever weapon you have available to you, so you don't need to spend a large amount of time farming. You can go straight into doing the bounties, working with your action skills to be able to knock those out as quick as possible. Let me know in the comments what you think of this build, and if you're going to give it a shot, like and subscribe for more Borderlands 4 content. See ya!